Welcome to Pedo Teeth Talk, brought to you by the American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry, a podcast show that delivers cutting-edge ideas for the professionals specializing in pediatric dentistry.
Thank you for tuning in to Pedo Teeth Talk, where we bring you the contemporary issues important to you and your practice. Brought to you by the American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry. I'm your host, Joel Berg. And thank you to our Pedo Teeth Talk sponsor, Hugh Freedy, for helping us bring you great content. We couldn't do this without them. Visit them at www.hughfreedy.com. That's HU-FRIEDY.com. We're here today with Dr. Joe Castellano. Dr. Castellano currently serves as president of the American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry, or AAPD. He attended the University of Texas Dental Branch in Houston and received his DDS degree in 1990. He then completed an advanced education in general dentistry residency and later his specialty training in pediatric dentistry, both at the University of Texas Health Sciences Center in San Antonio, Texas. Joe is a board-certified pediatric dentist and is an assistant clinical professor for the Department of Developmental Dentistry at UTHSC San Antonio School of Dentistry. He has served on AAPD's board as a district trustee, on the Council of Continuing Education, on the Council of Government Affairs, and has chaired the Council of Clinical Affairs and its Adolescent, Perinatal, Oral Health, and Behavior Guidance Committees. He has also served on the advisory board for the AAPD Pediatric Oral Health Research and Policy Center. Dr. Castellano is a graduate of the AAPD's Leadership Institute and the Advanced Leadership Institute. He's been active with the Texas Academy of Pediatric Dentistry and has served in all its leadership offices, including president. Dr. Castellano is in private practice in Laredo, Texas. Joe, thank you so much for being here with us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
It's great to be here, Joel. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we have the Prez. We haven't had the president yet in our podcast. So you'll be our inaugural AAPD president appearing on our podcast. That's a momentous occasion, too. So our audience is going to love it. So we're here today to talk to you about a really important subject, patient safety. And it sounds, when we say that the topic is safety, it sounds sort of like, why are we talking about safety? I mean, we're always concerned about safety. So why is that a topic the APD is focusing on, Dr. Castellano? Why is that a focus of attention right now?
Well, safety is being looked at in all areas of healthcare. Medicine is fairly strong in safety, of course, industry, and dentistry's kind of lagged a little bit. And the AAPD wants to create a culture of safety within pediatric dentistry. We want to make sure that we have a delivery system that protects the health and well-being of our patients and our oral health professionals. And so because of that, the AAPD has created a safety committee, which is charged with developing the culture of safety for pediatric dentistry. And what it'll do is incorporate safety into all aspects of oral health care delivery. We've got a 6-member panel. Jade Miller is the chair of that committee, and they're working really hard to make sure that pediatric dentistry takes the lead in safety in dentistry.
Well, that's really interesting because I know that you and I both have been involved in hospitals, and most pediatric dentists are involved in hospital activity at their children's hospital or their local hospital. And I think you would agree that safety has been a big topic in that same sense that you're describing it for many years now. So it's sort of like we all care about safety, but now we're trying to figure out ways to document and measure it. Is that a fair way to say it?
That's correct. We want to make sure we document it, we measure it, that it is the same across all parameters for everybody practicing. It's a little bit different. People say safety, what is that or what's it going to entail? And the way we see it is safety encompasses all areas of what we do. You have the obvious sedation safety or fire safety or patient care issues, but the committee is also digging deeper into things like, we've had recent issues with water lines and what is it that makes those safe and what are the things we need to do? Our records are a huge area that we need to look at, not particularly, with the record itself, but identity theft is a big thing. They say sometimes our records are more valuable than the money sitting inside our offices or the safes. And so we need to learn how to protect that and keep that safe. Or cybersecurity, your computer systems and and to make sure that those aren't hacked and, you have identity theft or things like that. So they're looking at everything to make sure that our offices are safe for our patients and for, our employees and ourselves.
Well, it sounds like, as you said, as we both said, that there's safety is a topic that we've always been interested in, but this documentation thing is going to be critical. So at the end of this, and I guess it doesn't end. It's a committee that's going to start out and do some work, and there's going to be some ongoing work. Is there some kind of work product that our members can expect? Like I think you referred when we were talking before to some kind of toolkit. What is some of the product of this work that's expected, or how has this committee been charged?
Well, there's a couple of things they're working on right now, and one of them is an online safety resource toolkit, if you will. And the other thing that they're working on and will take place in November is our first ever safety symposium. And the title of that is Hidden Threats and Safe Practices, Steps to Creating a Safe Dental Home. And these will be resources to where we can begin to educate our membership on safety and the things that we need to be looking at, not just the obvious, but the other things, and how to make sure that all that we do is the safest possible.
So you mentioned in looking at that toolkit, and I just want to select one or two examples that, Joe, you just referred to. So one of them was water lines. And, of course, we've heard for years, all of us way back in dental training heard about, I say way back if that's for myself being a little older, but you're a lot younger than me. So we talk about water lines, and now it's a big topic, but I expect then that the work that the APD committee, the safety committee, is going to be doing in this toolkit would give me some parameters or some metrics that I, as a young practitioner or as an established practitioner, can have sort of a checklist of sorts. Is that right? That I can go through this and say, am I complying with what the way of doing things is in the best way?
Yeah, absolutely. And they'll have with those type of things, they'll also have links to certain organizations with special expertise. For the water lines, you'll have an easy link to ASAP or asepsis and prevention to find out the things that we need to be doing for water lines. There's another organization for safety that will have some things that we'll be able to use. And, of course, the Centers for Disease Control. And all of these things that are critical to our practices, we'll be able to, access this information and be able to use it, in our own practices and to make sure we're doing the right things to keep things safe. Like, as for example, the water lines, we'll be able to look and say, are these the steps that we're doing? Am I doing it correctly? Am I not doing it correctly? And hopefully we can establish a level playing field to everybody's doing the same thing, and keeping pediatric dentistry safe.
So you mentioned, Joe, sedation as an example, and I think all of us, of course, in our training and our continuing education requirements to keep up to date to provide safe sedation or general anesthesia, for that matter, we have to focus on safety as a major part of that training, not just the delivery of care itself, but how do you create an environment for safety. So it seems, that being an example, these other things that you've mentioned, and I guess, when I'm now considering this, there are many examples, the water lines and the patient records. That's one that I hadn't thought of as part of safety, but certainly is. It seems like this is going to be one of the most important things, one of the most important pieces of work that started here in your presidential year and ongoing, because what could be more important than safety?
Oh, absolutely. One of the things, I also mentioned cyber safety, and just a personal example. I know, now we, with everything kind of being on a server and all these electronic health records, I know personally this last year, I had an issue where I had some ransomware that somehow made it onto my computer and onto our main server. And because we had multiple backups on site and off site, it really wasn't an issue. But I really think it's important that we understand cyber safety and that our members know that you do need to have these things in place, because what would have happened if I didn't was that they would have basically eaten up all the data in my computer. And if I wouldn't have paid the ransom, then they would have given me my data back. So all of these
Wow.
other types of safety issues that you don't realize that you should have in place is what's working on it. And I know you mentioned sedation, and that's another area that they're definitely addressing.
Well, I think, you can just start drilling down to everything we do. There's, radiographic images, ionizing radiation and the safety of that and tracking it and making sure the quality it's all interconnected. So it's so great that we're doing this work, and it's just another wonderful service provided by the Academy to do this. So you referred to a symposium that's going to take place this fall. Is that right? Is that in October? When is that going to be?
That will be November 8th and 9th in Chicago.
November, okay.
November. And I believe that it'll be held at the Renaissance Hotel. But I think it's going to be a great way to sort of kick off safety and get folks really involved. The main goals of the symposium are to make participants aware of the range and nature of safety in their practice of pediatric dentistry. They also want to provide an overview of the history of patient safety in industry and healthcare and how it is applicable to the practice of pediatric dentistry. And then the last goal that they'd like to achieve is to provide take-home information for the attendees to apply in their offices and improve safety for children, their families, and the dental personnel in your office. So they've got a great lineup of speakers that are available. That are going to speak during the symposium. And if you don't mind, I'll highlight a few of those because I think they're really interesting.
Please, I was just going to ask you that, please.
Okay. First, it'll start off with a kind of an overview of the history of medical safety and science and where's medicine and how did they get to this point. And then they'll also have what started it all in anatomy, dental sedation failure. And basically, it will talk about how did we kind of start looking at safety in dentistry, we all know we had the sedation deaths, and that caused us to start focusing on what we're doing. And so they'll have a presenter that talked about this and what happened during some of those failures and what could have been done to prevent that, and how safety is really important in sedation and have got us focused on what we're doing.
So you mentioned people outside of the pediatric dentistry profession will be speaking to experts on safety.
Correct. Yeah, we'll have some different folks. Some folks from industry. We have another folks from outside from industry. Some dental folks and from all over. And then there's another individual who is kind of a compliance a guru. So he'll be looking at records and the things you need to do to be in compliance with laws of records and keeping those things. Another interesting topic that we have is, do we have to be concerned in dentistry? And this is basically a representative of the dental liability and risk management folks, I guess insurance industry for short. And basically he's going to kind of give you the 2x4 upside the head type of look at mishaps that happened that people were completely unaware of.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong in your practice that you don't even think about? So that's a couple of them. I think you'll have an area where is how do you adapt this into your office? What are the things that you can do to make sure that you're developing a culture of safety in your office and to keep things in line with where they should be. And then of course they'll touch on infection control and patient records and information, and then safety in materials and that type of stuff. So I think a well-rounded symposium that they've put together, and I think it'll be very enlightening for our members and those in attendance.
Well, that's fantastic. We will now pause for a moment for a word from our sponsor.
Hugh Freedy is the global leader in dental instrument manufacturing and infection prevention solutions that keep you performing at your best. For more information on Hugh Freedy products, visit hughfreedy.com/AAPD crowns. That's hugh-freedy.com/AAPD crowns. And enter the promo code 2682 if placing an order for Pedo Crowns.
We are back with Dr. Joe Castellano, President of the American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry, and we're talking about the important topic of safety. And we were just discussing the fact that the APD on, I believe, November 8th and 9th of this year in Chicago is hosting a symposium on the topic of safety. And Joe, Is this is something I assume that anybody is invited? There's a registration and there's CE given for this credits?
Correct. I don't think the registration is open yet. I know I've seen it on our email blast that'll be happening in the fall. But it will be November 8th and 9th, as you said, and it'll be open to anybody that wants to attend.
That's fantastic. So I think related to this, we talked before about, sedation, that we're all aware of the safety issues there. In fact, when we study for our exams in sedation, we prepare to get a license, a permit in sedation. The vast majority of that training and preparation is related to safety in one way or another. Nonetheless, specifically in the area of sedation, are there some specific things that the APD is doing to address safety for the benefit of our patients, obviously, related to sedation?
Yes, there is. Absolutely.
So what are some of those things?
There's a couple of things that we're doing. First, the committee is working on a project to gather morbidity and mortality data in collection with various residency programs across the country. And basically, let's establish a database. And the database will help evaluate sedation outcomes in the future. I know every time that a sedation incident happens, everybody's running around and asking, is there data? What's the data say? Is this something that happens regularly? Is it a once in a million type of deal? We don't have that information. And so by creating this database, we'll be able to look back and say, this doesn't happen. We're very safe. These are anomalies that happen every so often, and overall we're doing a good job, or maybe we need to focus on other things. So the eventual goal is to have all the residency programs across the country participating in this database. But right now they're kind of piloting it and creating some data to be able to evaluate in the future.
So they're piloting this, and as you said, they're going to go to all the residency programs. Is there a plan to take this into private practice and to either voluntarily or some other means get private practitioners to enter data? Yes,
there is. We're working with a couple of groups right now. One of them being we're talking with the different groups, basically to see how we can create something that's simple and not really a time-consuming way for practitioners to enter data. I know everybody's afraid to enter data because, what if they come back and they look at me? But this would be kind of a anonymous type of deal. You enter your information, did everything go right? Did something go wrong? And be able to compile a database. And trying to put all the nuts and bolts together is a little bit complicated, but we've got a couple of leads, and hopefully we can expand on that and give everybody a place to enter data. And then the next step would be creating the habit of actually entering that data so that we have a really, really good database.
This is great stuff. I mean, the future of healthcare is outcomes. And
absolutely,
as we said before, what could be more important than measuring safety as an outcome, that we provide safe care in everything we do? So related to that, you mentioned this phasing of the plan with this database. You're going to start with a pilot in the residencies, expand to all the residencies, and then into the private practice arena. Can you give me sort of a rough sense of, how long it's going to be before we get to those next phases? When's this all going to begin, and what phases when?
I don't know that we necessarily have a timeline. I do know that we are working currently on trying to create a model or a program to be able to input information and data for our members. And I think they're trying to figure out the ifs and how, and how do you extract what data, and how is it going to be entered, and that type of stuff. So I think once that's done, that'll be piloted as well. The residency program database is already established, and there are certain residency programs across the country that are entering this data. And I think
already today,
yeah, that's correct. Yeah, that's already happening. And I think once and it may be towards the end of this summer, that they may start expanding that out to other residency programs to eventually incorporate all of them into it.
We'll learn a lot of other things from that, too, besides safety. I mean, we're going to learn a lot about outcomes, I assume. Is that going to be collected?
Yes. It'll be outcomes. It'll be, I guess, what regimens are being used, and are there, more chances of something happening with certain regimens versus
with narcotics
others.
versus no narcotics, or
correct. So I think there'll be a lot of information available through that once they start sifting through it and seeing what comes out. So I'm really looking forward to seeing.
It's great stuff.
The results.
This is fantastic. It's a great service for all of us. Related to this also, Joe, you mentioned to me before that some states are requiring inspection offices to maintain privileges. So not just about the individual providers training, but the office inspections. I know in Arizona, actually, in order to get my permit, I had to get the offices I'm in to verify that they had been certified as through an inspection. So what's the APD doing to address or help members with these inspections?
As you said, there's a lot of states now requiring inspections of the individual practitioners' offices. Texas has instituted that, and they're making their way across the state. I think probably in another month or so that they'll be through my office. But what the AAPD is doing to address this is, I know that it's kind of we know it's kind of burdensome on the state boards to do this, and I think a lot of them don't have the resources that they wish they had, and kind of being proactive in all of this. The AAPD is trying to develop a voluntary sedation where they're going to start out with deep sedation and general anesthesia accreditation model for pediatric dental practice. I know there's a lot of members out there who have like little surgical suites in their offices where they do general anesthesia and stuff. And so the AAPD is right now partnering with the American Association for Accreditation of Ambulatory Surgical Facilities, or Quad AFS is a way easier to say. And this organization initially started working with the plastic surgeons several years ago when they started having issues with mishaps in their offices, because they would do a lot of surgical procedures in their offices. And so they were able to create a kind of an inspection model, accreditation model that would go through, and their standards are pretty rigid. And so we've been working with them to take that and tailor it to pediatric dentistry, so that when they come through the office and accredited it will be accredited at a higher level than most state boards would ever do. And we're hoping that as they see the relevance of this, they'll start to say, hey, if this organization accredits your office, we're fine with that. We don't even need to do it. And it'll be a periodic thing. Every 2 to 3 years, they'll come in and recertify your office to make sure that it meets the standards for general anesthesia or deep sedation. And then
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, and once they kind of get this figured out for deep sedation, general anesthesia, they're going to look to see if they can do that for moderate sedation, which is what most of us do.
Right. That's right. What most of us do. Well, this is fantastic. And just like everything else that the Academy does, which kind of turns to gold in the sense of becoming a standard, I suspect that as we collate information about state requirements and have even a higher level, as you just mentioned, our standard or our recommendations will become the standard of care, or sort of the de facto standard of how to do things right in the interest of safety. And I think that's everything we've done. Our policies and guidelines in general are that.
Absolutely.
What are some other things as we kind of get to the end of our time here? Are there any other things the APD is doing to create a culture of safety? You talked about the American Board of Pediatric Dentistry to me before. Yes.
The APD kind of approached the American board and said, look, we're kind of going with this culture of safety. We think it's important for pediatric dentistry. We want to be in the forefront to make sure that when folks come into our office or people look and say, they're about safety. You can go to a pediatric dental office and you're going to be in good hands. And so the American board was also very receptive to that. And they're going to start to incorporate safety into their domains that they test on
nice.
for their examinations. And also, I think they're going to try to create some QCI modules on safety also that we use every year when we
for the recertification effort.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So they're looking at really incorporating that stuff into their programs as well. So they're on board with the safety because everybody feels it's just really important to make sure that we're doing the right thing and our members are doing the right things and no one can question them about that.
This is all really great, Joe. I've learned a lot. I think I think one way to characterize this really important effort the Academy is doing on safety is to take all the things that we're already doing and, like we always do, just kind of take it to the next level and just sort of tweak the quality. It just sort of, we do this anyway, but it just looks at the documentation, looks at the tweaking the processes and systems, documentation really being key to that process and system, and making it just right, dialing it in. And that's what we're doing with the safety culture. I think that's a good way to describe it. Would you agree?
Oh, I agree. I believe, and the Academy believes that we need to be proactive and offensive with a lot of these things and make sure that we're on the cutting edge. Because sometimes if you sit back, other people will make the decisions for you. And if we can do what's best for our patients and our profession and lead the way so that others follow, I think that's where we should be.
This is great. Thank you so much, Joe, for being with us. We're just weeks away from our annual session, also in Chicago this year.
Absolutely.
So you're pretty excited, I'm sure, about what's going to be a great meeting.
Yes, I think we're expecting a wonderful meeting. It'll be May 23rd to 26th in Chicago. We've got some great venues. The welcome reception will be at one of my favorite museums, the Museum of Science and Industry.
I loved it as a kid. I push buttons and make things happen.
Oh, yeah, it's cool. Our opening ceremony will feature Nicole Malachowski.
Wow.
So she'll talk, and then there'll be a little performance by the Blue Man Group, which should be interesting.
Nice.
We got a lot of great speakers lined up for the session.
So we got Blue Angels and Blue Men. We got both.
That's right. Yeah, we should just call it the opening blue ceremony.
That's right. And Chicago blues. Chicago is famous for blues, so it's
absolutely.
Well, it sounds great. I'm really excited for you, and thank you so much, Dr. Castellano, for giving us some of your time today as we move into your presidential meeting. Topic of safety is on our minds, and I'm very excited that we're doing so much as the Academy to make things better for our members. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure being here.
Yeah, it was great to have you. Thank you. And thank you to our audience for tuning into Pedo Teeth Talk, where we bring you the contemporary issues important to you in your practice, brought to you by the American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry. We'll see you next time, and thanks a lot.
Pedo Teeth Talk is brought to you by the American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry, the show that delivers cutting-edge ideas for the professional specializing in pediatric dentistry. If you have any questions or comments, please email info@aapd.org. We welcome your ideas for future shows and guests. For more information on the American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry, visit aapd.org.